second reading is from Paul's letter to the Philippians. In the 3rd chapter, listen again for God's word to you. If anyone has reason to be confident in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day, a member of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew born of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. Yet, whatever gains I had, these I have come to regard as loss because of Christ. More than that, I regard everything as loss because of the surpassing value of knowing Jesus Christ, my Lord. For his sake I have suffered the loss of all things, and I regard them as rubbish, in order that I might gain Christ and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law, but one that comes through faith in Christ, the righteousness from God based on faith. I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection, and the sharing of his sufferings by becoming like him in death, if somehow I may attain the resurrection from the dead. Not that I have already attained this, or have already reached the goal, but I press on to make it my own, because Christ Jesus has made me his own. Beloved, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but this one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the heavenly call of God in Jesus Christ. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So our scriptures are talking about God doing a new thing and pressing on for the prize, pressing on towards the heavenly call of God in Jesus Christ. Both of those put us outside our comfort zones, put us to doing something new because God is doing something new, and cause us to ask, what is God's call going to ask of us? I want to share a story this morning that deals with some of that. It is a story written by a friend of mine, Ross Mackenzie, who is a Scottish minister, Presbyterian turned Episcopalian. He was a church historian, and for many years I knew him at Chautauqua as the head of the religion department. He wrote a book because he had so many fabulous stories and insights and prayers to share. And this story is called The Conversion of Mrs. Brown. After the first 5 minutes in the company of Joyce Snell and Margaret Watson, I concluded that they were two of the dumbest girls I ever met. I use the word in both the literal and the popular sense of dumb. When I met them, I was a pastor in a vast, low-cost housing development on the fringe of a Scottish city. Before 3,000 homes were dumped by builders on its fields, it had been the Buttercup Farm, with wheat growing in its fields. Joyce and Margaret were two skinny stalks in the new and living harvest that was growing among the rows of brick and concrete. They were shy to the point of muteness, with not a word to stutter out about their work, their friends, or their interests. Together, they came one spring, such are the workings of grace, to join the church. They blushed as they mumbled those words. Leaning against one another like those fabled Irish houses that have to be sold in pairs, lest one falls down. They were received at the end of 12 long weeks of classes on the meaning of church membership, still utterly dumb. Now, each fall, the congregation had what we called a mission of friendship. After some minimal training, we sent members of the congregation off into the parish to visit the houses that were being opened in the rapidly expanding area. The technique was to send the visitors out in pairs, older with younger, experienced with inexperienced. Through an incredible lack of thought, we never calculated that Joyce and Margaret would volunteer for parish evangelization. But they did, one fall. And through an unforgivable mistake, we sent them out together. They arrived at the front door of Mrs. Brown, about whom the kindest thing that could be said was that she had probably never darkened a church door in her life. When she opened the door, she saw them, one pushing the other forward like children going for shots, each struck dumb with fear. Finally, when she could make no sense of what was going on, and assuming that they were either foreigners, aliens, or refugees from the Institute for the Deaf and Dumb further up the road, she invited them in, and, this being Scotland, she regaled them with cups of tea. Joyce, the dumber of the two, then electrified the household by announcing, "We are the mission of friendship." That was the sum of what she could stammer out. Margaret murmured quietly, "We want to tell you about Jesus." I guarantee that if I had gone to see Mrs. Brown, she would have resisted the blandishments of the professional clergy, as she had done so well for all of her life. She came to see me the following day. I chilled, waiting for the bad news. If these two girls went through hell to tell me about Jesus, long pause. They didn't, but I'd like to know something more about what you're all about in that church of theirs. Joyce and Margaret remind me of a phrase of G.K. Chesterton. Each generation is converted by the saint who contradicts it the most. In a world that is too clever by far for its own good, where victory goes to the smooth-talking politician and the sale goes to the fast-talking, wisecracking drummer-up of business, we need the sanity and sanctity of God's shy and silent ones. They may not be glib in their speech. We may judge them dull because they aren't as clever as we are. They may not be movers and shakers, but they would rather be judged dumb than have their dreams invaded by the non-stop talking dummies. What weird spirit grabbed Joyce and Margaret in that moment, I will never know. Maybe it was God's Spirit. They stammered and outdropped their faith. In doing so, they clarified God for me. They reminded me that there is a language of stammering that is more eloquent than the language of speech. I need to deliver my people from captivity, God said to Moses on the mountain when the bush burned strangely. "Oh, God," Moses replied, "I am no crowd-rouser." Actually, what he said was, "Oh, my Lord, I have never been eloquent. I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." And God said, "I shall help you speak." Praise then to all the stutterers who can hardly release the firmly blocked word. Praise to Moses, and praise too, as far as I have the vote, to Peter the fisher, and Thomas Aquinas, the dumb ox of Cologne, as he was called on account of his reticence. Praise be to Anne Frank before her captors in the concentration camp, and to the Jews of silence in the Soviet Union. Praise to that company of the quiet and the shy anywhere, who, warring against every natural instinct, bend to some inner command and offer the most nakedly simple witness to God and to God's love, or to peace and its opportunity, or to justice and its necessity. It is enough to know that God counts the will for the deed, enough to know that God hears the substance in our stammering, that in our silence, God hears and respects what we intend.